Hey, hi, what's good? It feels really weird to be talking to you again on a one-on-one with no guest on. It's been a while since we did this. Over a year ago, I'm pretty sure, like 14 months maybe, since we had a solo episode with just you and I talking. It feels kind of odd, to be to be honest. I actually planned on making one of these solo episodes about a year ago, right before Christmas and New Year's Eve. I have in my notes from the notes that I wrote a year ago when I wanted to make this episode. I wrote, "Make sure to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year." So yeah, but I suppose when this episode goes live, it's end November. So I wish I can wish you an early Merry Christmas and Happy New Year till I see you again in the new year. But yeah, it has been a while, and I suppose the reason is I've just really tried to talk to as many interesting people as I possibly could because I know ultimately the guests that I have on the show are the ones that actually provide the value on this podcast, and uh it's limited what kind of value I can provide, just being completely transparent and honest. I'm a dumbass. I, uh, I I try to be a funny person off screen. I'm not very smart in that sense. I try to learn and educate myself. But ultimately, I am aware that it's the guests that carry the show, and not me, and that's why I haven't made one of these in a while. So the purpose of this episode, I suppose, is I actually want to share some of the lessons I've learned this year with you. And before we do that, I also have in my notes that I wanted to tell you that we're also on iTunes. Just an early plug, I suppose, or Apple Podcast. I think it's called now, right? I think it was called iTunes a year ago, back when I wrote this note. Um, so if you that's your preferred platform to listen on podcast, we are on Apple Podcast slash iTunes. I think it's called Apple Podcast now. But if YouTube is your preferred way of listening to podcasts or viewing, make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. It motivates me to keep going to do this, but also ultimately I like to view it as a win-win situation, because ultimately the bigger the podcast gets, the bigger the guests we can have on. And the bigger the guests we can have on, the more value the podcast can provide to you. So that's how I like to see it. Also, it's risk free to subscribe. If you don't like being subscribed, you can just unsubscribe at any point in time. I think you should give it a try if you haven't done so already. And yeah, follow if you're listening on other platforms. And that's it. That's all. Okay, no more shameless asking for stuff and things. Um, Before we get into to some of the things that I like to share with you that has actually helped me tremendously this year with the quality of life, in my life, obviously, and for the people around me. You may have noticed also, if you're interested at all in the progression of this podcast, it has improved. The quality overall has improved tremendously. I've really focused this year on improving quality wise in terms of both the visuals and the sound. Obviously, we have the Shure SM7B, I think it's called. I'm not a great tech geek. Shure SM7B, I think it's called. The industry standard microphone for podcast that provides excellent sound, at least from my end, and then an actual camera to film my perspective of the podcast. Now, it's a bit more tricky to get better quality from the guests. That whole perspective is recorded straight from Zoom, where we do the podcast, where I talk to the people, and that's something I'm trying to focus in. I want to focus on improving next. That's going to be my goal next year, to somehow figure out how we can get better audio from them, and better visuals, a better video quality off of them. I've kind of been scared in a way to ask people to record themselves with a proper camera, and send it to me to be transparent, because I'm already asking a lot of them, and these are pretty, like, these are busy people. They're doing me a huge favor by coming on the podcast. So asking them to do more feels I'm not a fan of it. And so, but I want to figure out a way to not be an inconvenience to them, while also getting some better quality from their side. Also, I got a Rodecaster Pro. For anyone who knows what that is, it's a mixer that, well, this microphone is hooked up to. First of all, when I first bought this microphone, I didn't know that you can't plug it into your PC directly. It has to go through something. It connects with an XLR cable. For anybody who knows what that is, I don't want to be too technical about it, because I don't even know too much about it myself. And that can't go straight into your PC. It has to go through something, like a mixer, for example. So I bought a Rodecaster Pro 2, and just to show you what it looks like. See, I'm reaching out. This is what it looks like. And the really cool thing about this is the fact that there's a lot of possibilities with this. I can change the screen, the things you see on this video, the video part of the podcast, with these buttons here. So I can go back to my screen here. Can also do a split screen. And this is just to show the possibilities of some of the things we can do. We can also, let's see, change to a screen recording, I suppose. This is my website, patrickwill.dk. A very simple, I suppose, website of, trying to plug the podcast. By the way, if you're looking to start your own podcast, I've made a page here on my website where you can find all the equipment that I use. This is Amazon affiliated links, or these are Amazon affiliated links, which means I may earn commission from purchases, but of course with no extra cost to you. But if you're interested in some equipment for starting your own podcast, this is what I use. And there's an image here of my current setup. It's very cramped because I have a super small desk. But yeah, this is just to give you an idea of, you don't have to necessarily invest a lot of money in a podcast setup. Some of these things are a little bit expensive, like the microphone and the Rodecaster Pro. But this is just to show an example if you are in the market to start your own podcast. I mean, you could do it from anywhere. You can do it from home if you want to. So let's go back to me here. This is just to show you kind of the possibilities that we can utilize with this new Rodecaster Pro 2. There's a funny story attached to this thing, a very frustrating story. I don't know if it's funny. It was frustrating as fuck. When I ordered this thing, you have to install it first. Just like when you buy a phone, you have to set it up. And let me see if I remember this correctly. When I tried to set it up, in the middle of setting it up, the screen just went black with a little bit of text, and it said, "You cannot use this device until June 2022." And I bought this thing in April 2023, I believe. And so it said something about, this is a pre-order of the Rodecaster Pro 2. You can't use it until June 2022, which was almost a year prior to when I bought this fucking thing. And I tried to reach out to Rode. By the way, Rode has insanely good customer service. They're really helpful. They go the extra mile to try and help you. Unfortunately, they couldn't help me with this thing. They did not really understand why I did this. I suppose this would be a pop-up screen if you actually did pre-order it before June 2022. But I didn't. I ordered it a year after I supposedly was able to use it. So they didn't quite understand it. It's obviously a mistake in its software, I suppose. So I had to send it back and order a new one, and that one worked, luckily. But it was a very frustrating experience because that meant I couldn't use this microphone until I got this new thing. So for a few episodes in the beginning of 2023, I still use the old microphone, but it's fine. Hopefully you can hear the quality of the audio, at least from my end, having improved. And pardon me while I take a sip of water here. But yeah, again, really cool thing to use. Oh yeah, and also I should show you. Let's see. So you can also install like sound effects if we ever want to do that. If we want like a jingle for the intro, I suppose. Bruh. I believe that's so. I can't actually hear these right now, but I believe you should be able to hear them. I think that was like bruh. Bruh. We also have a fart sound effect because I'm 2 years old. I don't remember what this one is, actually. You can also change your own voice.
Say robot, for example, very fitting with all the AI, artificial intelligence, and the robots taking over the world soon.
Now I should be back to normal. So I can't actually hear this. So I hope I'm back to normal. Otherwise, I'll have to sound like a robot for the rest of this episode. Let's go back to main camera here. This is a cool thing. I'm not much of a tech geek, and I don't know much about tech. But I think this is cool. This is like it was like Christmas when I got this thing. Super fun to play around with. But yeah, and as usual, I'm awful at transitions. So we're just gonna go straight into the main part of what I wanted to talk about in in this podcast episode, I suppose. I kind of want to wrap up this year, sharing some of the things that has really made quite an impact in my life. Things that I've learned from the podcast, from the people I've talked to on the podcast, amongst other places, of course. And the first thing that that has helped me a lot is ironically not giving advice or talking about shit that I don't know anything about. And I made a solo episode. It was one of the first episodes here of the podcast, where when I look back and listen back to that episode, I cringe so hard because I try to give so much advice on so much shit that I don't know anything about. There was a lot of business advice that I was trying to give that was like completely missed, and it was obviously because I don't know what the fuck I was talking about, and it's so embarrassing to listen back to. And this is really something that Alex Hermosi taught me. He did. I make it sound like he taught me, like we talked privately and he shared this with me. But something I learned from Alex Hermosi, obviously watching some of his content, the podcast he's been on. By the way, if you've never heard of Alex Hermosi, he's so well spoken. The way he puts things, it's incredible. He's so real about things, and if you are not sensitive, you should really listen to some of the things this guy says. He shares so many things that are so thought-provoking and so real that even if you don't necessarily agree with everything he says, it still provokes thoughts in your head and makes you think and ponder things, which I think is a good thing to what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, you should always self-reflect and analyze your situation. And I think some of the things that he talks about are really worth thinking about and drawing a thread to your own life, if that makes any sense. See, I wish I could be as articulate as Alex Hermosi. I'm not. He's really well spoken. But anyway, I didn't mean to make a rant about him. But something that I learned from him was don't talk about shit that you don't know anything about. And do not give advice to people on how they should do things. Instead, share how you've done things and tell people how it helped you, and do not pull it down someone's throat, but ask them what they think about it instead. So for example, do not do if someone comes to you, do not pull your advice down their head or over their head. Instead, tell them, okay, I've dealt with this. This is what I did to overcome it, perhaps. What are your thoughts on this? Maybe this can help you. It helped me. But you should never tell people what they should and shouldn't do. And the reason why this has been so powerful is because I've really tried to implement this when talking to people. And it's remarkable how much people listen to you versus if you just shove down advice and tell them you should do this. I mean, why are you complaining about this? Why are you not just doing something about it? You should do this, this, and that. But actually sharing your own experiences, how you dealt with situations, and figure out if this can be helpful to them. This is, also, I'm getting into sales. For people in sales, this is a really good technique, I suppose, as well. Listen to people and figure out if what you have to sell them, do they actually need it. Instead of just shoving down what you have, don't just start pitching about what you have to sell. First, figure out if they actually need it. Does that make sense? And that kind of ties back to don't shove your advice down someone's throat. Tell them what you did to overcome whatever it may be, and see if that can help them. And do not expect it to necessarily always help them, but try to put it that way and have that mindset next time you talk to somebody. It has really been remarkable to how I conversate with people in my life. I've often honestly felt like people were never listening to me. Whenever we had these conversations, I would always be like, "But why are you complaining about this? You should just do this, this, and that." And it has just helped me so much having people actually listen to what I say, and it's also been beneficial for me. And it feels much better to actually figure out if this thing helps them or not, instead of just assuming it will right off the bat. Hopefully that makes sense. And with that, I promise that I will never try to talk about something I don't know anything about and shove advice down your throat that I don't know if you'll need or not. But I would like to share experiences that has helped me, that hopefully can help you. And so I will never do an episode 7, which was the episode number of the podcast that I referred to a few minutes ago, where I just talk shit about shit, to tell you the truth. Okay, so I have a list of other things that has helped me. And I have 2 beverages of choice today. A Monster energy drink and a glass of water. Monster, not a sponsor. Water is. Water has sponsored this podcast officially. Now, again, I'm not great at transitions, so I'm just going to go through this list in order, I suppose, as opposed to not in order, I guess. One thing, so I've talked about sleep on this podcast with a few different guests. I believe the guy's name is Matthew Walker, like the big sleep expert on on social media and has been on numerous podcasts talking about sleep. I would love to get have a conversation with that guy. Sleep is something that has been a big part of my life. Obviously, this sounds so strange because obviously sleep is massive for everyone, but it has been a big part of my life in the sense that I have always had trouble sleeping. Um, it wasn't until 4 or 5 years ago when I started to exhaust myself both physically and mentally every day that I could actually sleep well. In my teenage years, I was a big gamer. I used to play video games when I got home from school. I would play video games until I went to bed. And because that wasn't really exhausting and it was just, um, it wasn't productive and I didn't feel like I got anything out of my day, I couldn't sleep. And so the more productive I've been and the more things that I've done during the day that has been rewarding, the easier I of a time I've had falling asleep. Um, that's one thing that has helped me with sleep. But recently, a few years ago, or actually, I suppose my whole life, there's still been issues with me falling asleep and staying asleep and having actually deep REM sleep, good deep quality sleep, and that has been my anxiety. Uh, Especially when I know I've had an important thing to do the next day. I haven't been able to sleep, and my anxiety kicks in, and cortisol level rises to fucking Mount Everest. And because your cortisol goes up, your stress hormone, I believe it's a hormone, your anxiety is going crazy. And because you have anxiety, you can't fall asleep. And it's this evil loop. So I can't fall asleep. I get anxious about it because I know I have this important thing in the morning. And now I'm anxious, and now I definitely can't sleep. One thing that has helped me so much with not being anxious about sleeping is it sounds kind of counterintuitive, I suppose, but it's actually telling myself that no matter what happens, I can sleep for just an hour. I will show up and do the thing I'm supposed to do tomorrow. Regardless of how much sleep I get, I will get up and I will do the thing. I will show up. It's an important meeting, whatever it may be. I will show up to that meeting and do my absolute best to kill that meeting or whatever it may be, regardless of how much sleep I got. And for some reason, telling myself this thing, it just reduced my anxiety so much. And actually, not just telling myself it, but actually believing it. And I know I've done this a million times before. I've had so many sleepless nights where I still showed up to school or work or whatever and done the important thing the next day. I've done it a million times. So I know it's true. No matter how much sleep I get, I will still show up to do that important thing. And actually putting that in my head at night when I can't sleep, it has reduced my anxiety that I have at night unfathomably much. Is that correct grammar? So fucking much. And because my anxiety is reduced, the cortisol goes down, and I am able to fall asleep. Maybe not, if I already have trouble sleeping, obviously I may not be able to fall asleep immediately, but I'll be able to fall asleep faster than if my anxiety is raging. And also, the quality of sleep when you finally do fall asleep is just so much better. If you have anxiety and your cortisol is out of whack while you're sleeping, you're also not going to get a deep quality or great quality of sleep anyway. So both falling asleep faster, the quality of sleep, and there was one more thing I thought of. I'm forgetful. Oh yeah, and just like not feeling anxious is also nice in general. Even let's say you can't fall asleep anyway. You're not feeling anxious about it. It's maybe a bit, you're annoyed a little bit maybe, but you're not feeling anxious, which is a fucking awful feeling. Everybody hates feeling anxiety, I guess. Um, so just if anything, you're not feeling anxious, which is a very good thing. In my book at least. So again, that's something that has helped me tremendously with sleep. I'm still a bad sleeper. I don't think my quality of sleep is great, and I'm trying to figure out why. Um, I never feel fully rested. I also work quite hard, both try to exhaust myself physically and mentally every single day. So I don't know if that plays into it. It does in general help me fall asleep faster at night. I know if I haven't done anything productive during the day, I've just fucked off and watched Netflix all day. If I haven't been to the gym, there's no chance I'm gonna fall asleep fast at least. So, right. And with that, another sip. Also, so ironic. Actually, dude, so ironic. I'm talking about quality of sleep and I'm drinking Monster energy drink. Obviously, this can't be good for your sleep quality either. I don't drink this often, but I do drink it sometimes. It's so fucking tasty. Monster, sponsor my podcast like water has. Right. That was one thing. That was one, not advice, but one thing that has helped me. Um, Something that has changed since last year as well, at least in my life. If anybody follows what goes on in my life, if you don't, I don't blame you. It's not particularly exciting. I think it's exciting. I understand why other people might not. I'm so privileged to be able to do what I do. So I think I have a very exciting life. Humble brag, I suppose. I think my life is super exciting, even though it looks so boring to other people. All I do is just trying to be as productive as I possibly can every single day. I don't go clubbing. I don't really particularly enjoy that. I don't drink alcohol. Sometimes, maybe 4 or 5 times a year. And I try to stick to this eating the same thing almost every single day for convenience sake. So a lot of things that people find boring as fuck, and I get it. I get it, but I like it. Okay, so get off my back. But so one thing that has changed since last year, I moved into my own apartment. Finally, is my first apartment, my own apartment, I suppose. And one thing that I was really worried about was because I don't I did not have a job at the time. I just returned from Florida. I moved in with my dad. I did not have a job at that time. I finished my education in marketing economics, and I was looking for a part time job at the time to support myself financially. But I knew I had to move anyway, because, and I won't get too much into this. It doesn't, well, it's not that exciting, I suppose. I just lived in a pretty toxic household where I lived before, and I had to fucking get away from that. It was, you know, I was a little bit worried about moving because I didn't have a job, but I knew, it, it's different from situation to situation, of course, but the the situation I was in was draining me mentally so fucking much. And I knew, I was pretty sure that a financial worry was better than the situation I was in there. Because if you don't have your head right, I mean, everything else doesn't matter. You have to have your mental knocker right. and I was really not happy living where I lived before. And I knew I had to get out. And so I found the first place I could find, and I moved in here. And it's not the most attractive place, but I've lived here for a year now, and I'm okay with it. I'm not a person that seeks a bigger box to live in. It would be nice, of course, sure, but it's not something I desire and need. It's a nice to have, not a need to have for me. I'm pretty frugal. I don't like spending money. And so it's a decent place to live here. And I guess what I wanted to say and what I wanted to share was, if you are in a really bad situation and worry about, how do I put this? Something that is also bad, um, that will be the outcome. Like, I was worried about, how am I going to pay for this? Even though, I mean, to be completely transparent, I knew I was always going to be fine financially moving, but I knew it would just cost me a lot of money. Of course, moving into my own place, at least until I found a job to finance it. Um, but I guess if you are in a really toxic place, in a really toxic household, and this is unfortunately the case for a lot of people, some worse than others, and I will never ever ever tell you that I was in the worst possible place you can be in, because I know there's so many people that have it far more worse than I had, by far. Um, but you have to somehow figure out to get away from that, from toxic people, from a toxic environment. You are influenced by it. You will become toxic. You are the average of the five closest people to you. And you just have to figure out a way to get away from that. And I know it's so much easier said than done, but some of the worries that you have about leaving, I mean, I can't necessarily talk about, I have had toxic relationships, but there's people that have had it way worse than I have. And with not trying to talk about something that I don't know anything about again, um, there are always worries about leaving a toxic relationship, for example. But if that toxic relationship is draining you so much that you can't live your life properly, it's worth leaving that toxic environment to pursue something else, of course, and then deal with the other worries that won't drain you to the same degree. Does that make sense? I feel like it makes sense in my head, but I'm not an Alex Hermosi that can articulate my thoughts. One of my big weaknesses is the fact that I sometimes, rarely though, have something good in my head, but I can't spew it out through my mouth properly. It won't come out. I know the idea that I have in my head, but it just won't come out of my mouth properly. So I hope that makes sense to some degree at least. Get out of your toxic environment. I think it also ties back to working hard. Some people just give up and think that they can never get out of that toxic environment. And you I'm pretty sure you can. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure you can. If you've given up and you just sit back and just let everyone else control how you live your life, you'll never get out of that toxic environment. But you have to do everything in your power to get out of there. And I really do think it's possible. Yeah. I think that's the moral of what I wanted to say. It's a pretty deep topic, and I actually thought about not going so deep here, but yeah, I hope it makes sense. And I kind of feel like episode 7 Patrick right now of WillCast, because I can't quite articulate what I think, but you get the idea, I hope. Another thing, as I mentioned before, I quit a quite, well, I haven't probably mentioned this, but I quit a quite well paying job, part time job that made it possible for me to finance my life. And I only worked part time. And I was very privileged to only work a real job 20 hours a week and be able to do whatever the fuck I wanted the rest of the week. Sorry, monster. And I quit that job. Actually, wow, I didn't even think about this, but this kind of ties back to a toxic environment. I was not very happy about the workplace. I liked the work tasks, the job itself. The environment, not so much. There was a ton of people that were great people, sure, but we were just not a match. I could not relate to anybody there, and whenever they opened their mouth, I wanted to shoot myself. Is to exaggerate, of course. By the way, I want to clarify: these were so great people, great people, but we were just not a match. We could not talk about anything without either they get bored of me, I get bored of them, they think I'm insane, or I think they're insane. And that's okay. It's not that they're bad people, but it made me, it was very tough to socialize there, and it felt very toxic actually to speak to these people. And so that's one thing. I knew I had to get out of there. But also there was a poll from I've always wanted to learn how to sell. And I know salespeople get a bad rep, and I completely get it. There's a lot of scummy salespeople out there. But there's also a lot of very good salespeople that I believe actually have your best interest in mind. Of course, there are selfish reasons for becoming a salespeople, of course. And there has, for me, I mean, of course, there's selfish reasons. You want to make money, perhaps. You want to be able to articulate yourself better. That's one of the reasons I'm in sales. Talking to people every single day. I mean, it does help you talk. And I am a awful talker. As someone who's been a content creator where most of your work involves sitting in front of a computer by yourself, editing videos, writing scripts, talking has not been my strong side. It's not something I've done much. And so in sales, you talk to someone for 8 hours every single day. At least that's part of the job, right? That was one of the reasons. But I also think getting a sales job is unbelievably beneficial for everyone, because learning how to sell will benefit you so much in all areas of life, like having a conversation or building relationships, debating, arguing, getting people to over to your side of thinking. And if you want to start a business, obviously learning how to sell is pretty essential. And so when I started this job, all I did for the first 2 months was picking up the phone and calling people for 8 hours every single day. Now, that's not a very fun job, just being transparent to you. It's very exhausting. It can be fun. Some of the conversation you'll have with people on the other side of the phone can be very exciting and very fun, especially if you tap into the mindset of trying to understand the people on the other side of the phone instead of being selfish and just push your idea over to them. First, understand if they have a need for what you're trying to sell, and then trying to sell it to them. Do not just, I don't like the method of just trying to sell it, pitch your idea immediately before actually understanding if this is something that even makes sense in the first place. People get pissed. Of course, if you call somebody and just shove your ideas down their throat, you get pissed. Of course, I get it. So just a small sales technique, I suppose. Jeremy Lee Minor, follow him on Instagram. talks about this a lot. Remove yourself from the equation and focus on the prospect. Focus on their needs, question them, listen to them. That's another thing. If you really want to become a great salesperson, you will learn how to listen, become a really good listener, which is also a tremendous skill to apply to relationship building, to the people that you love in your life, listening to them, actually listening to them. It's another thing you'll learn. So that's a really important thing if you ever want to get into sales. But I think just having 2 to 6 months of being on the phone could be so beneficial for everyone. You'll learn so much about human behavior, human psychology, which is so beneficial. We are social creatures. We need each other. We need to understand each other. So picking up a sales job, regardless if you want to be a salesperson, I really truly believe this has helped me so much, and I believe it could be beneficial for everyone. I'm not trying to shove this as advice down your throat, but I do really think this could be beneficial for everyone to just for a period of time try it out. You'll also build really thick skin. You'll have to because you'll be shouted at on the phone. People will call you names, talk shit to you. You'll learn how to I think learn how to act on logic and not necessarily emotions, because you have to remove your emotions from the equation, or at least the negative emotions. You'll need empathy to be a good salesperson, again, because you need to understand the other person. But all these negative emotions of anger and being pissed off and anxiety, you'll have to remove those from the equation. And you'll learn that. You'll also learn how to not be as nervous speaking to other people. There's a lot of people that suffer from social anxiety, something I've always suffered from. And this has helped me tremendously, not being as anxious and as nervous talking to other people. Holy shit, that was a rant and a half. I guess I'll leave it off at that. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I hope some of the things that I've talked about here could be beneficial to you. Hopefully, you can use some of these things. And I think this is the last, or I don't think this is the last episode of the podcast this year. I will be posting lots of shorts on this channel for the next few months, and then I'm in the process of rethinking a lot of things of how I want to run this podcast. But I genuinely want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. The podcast grew more this year than it did the previous year, by 3 or 4 times, which is great. I've also put a shit ton of work into it, and it's really nice to see that you guys can actually use this for something. I love interacting with you guys in the comments, even though you are very quiet. Not a lot of comments on the videos, but whenever you do leave a comment, just know that I really appreciate it, and I love talking to you there. I also really want to thank my editor, Gaston, from Argentina, who's edited the shorts for the past 9 or 10 months, and has absolutely been killing it. I want to thank him so much for being a part of the team. And that's about it. Again, Merry Christmas in a month and a Happy New Year. Take it easy. Peace.